Hello, and welcome to the final unit in career development. In this unit, we're going to talk about the last step in the job search process, the job interview. By now, you've written a great resume and cover letter, you've practiced your networking elevator speech, and you got a job interview. In this video, we will go over some important things to know about job interviews in the United States. This is your chance to answer questions about your skills and qualifications, ask questions about the job or the company, and make a positive impression on the employer. In later videos, we will focus on the language of questions, show you some sample questions you could hear in a job interview, and how to answer them. At the end of the unit, you will record your own answer to a typical job interview question. Let's begin with some basic information about job interviews. A job interview is a formal meeting between an employer and a job seeker to decide if the person should get the job. The employer is called the interviewer and is the person asking the questions. The job seeker is called the interviewee and is the person answering the questions. Job interviews are usually in person or face-to-face and are quite formal. Sometimes interviews can be done by phone or video conference. To be more successful, job seekers can prepare for an interview by practicing answers with specific examples of their skills and qualifications from their past experience. Interviews are a great chance to explain your qualifications and transferable skills with examples or short stories. For example, many employers look for people who can show leadership skills or creativity in solving problems. You can prepare answers that show you have these skills by using examples from your past work experiences or education. Remember, you're not memorizing answers, but just preparing some short, specific examples that you can use to answer common interview questions. For example, if an interviewer said, "Tell me about a time that you solved a problem," I would talk about how I created a document to help other teachers plan their schedules. Here's another example question. If the interviewer says, "What did you learn from working at XYZ company?" I would answer by saying, "I learned many things about new software and computer programs to manage information in a busy office." By having a short, prepared example, I would feel more confident in my answer. I can always add more information in the interview and give more details, but at least I have something to say when an interviewer asks these questions. Sometimes interview questions can be difficult to answer. It is a good idea to ask for clarification or repetition if you don't understand the question. You will learn how to do this in a later video. Before an interview, job seekers should prepare a list of questions that they want to ask the interviewer about the company or about the job itself. By asking 2 or 3 questions, the candidate shows interest in the job and the company. Some examples of possible questions to ask are: 1. What are the daily responsibilities of this job? 2. What computer equipment or software does the company use? Finally, job seekers should make a positive impression by looking professional. They do this by wearing professional clothes, such as a business suit or dress. You should be on time or early to the interview. During the interview, keep eye contact with the interviewer. give clear and honest answers, and bring extra copies of important documents like resumes or certifications. In summary, job seekers should be prepared for job interviews with examples of their skills and qualifications to answer the questions. Job seekers should also ask a couple questions about the organization or the job duties. And finally, job seekers should make a positive impression by presenting themselves professionally. Now, go on to a reading which tells you more information about job interviews.
Hi there. In this video, we are going to discuss some typical interview questions. We will discuss two types of these questions and finally look at a few questions you should ask in an interview. In a typical interview, the interviewer, or interviewers, as sometimes there may be more than one person, is there to find out if you are the right person for the job. If you are in an interview or preparing for one, then congratulations. You have got this far because the employer is seriously considering you as a possible employee. However, you now need to show them that you really are the person for the job. You can do this by answering the questions the interview asks you in an honest and detailed way. Honest because the interviewer wants to know if you are the same person you say you are in your resume and cover letter. And detailed because you want to give enough information in your responses. During an interview, some questions will be direct and some will be indirect. An example of a direct question is, why are you a good fit for this job? Or why do you want to work for this company? These questions should be pretty clear to understand and answer. Since both questions use why, you should give reasons in your answers. So you might say in your response, I believe I'm a good fit for this company because I have the necessary skills and experience to fit right in and help the company grow. However, indirect questions are more difficult to recognize. An example of an indirect question is, so tell me a little bit about yourself. It's called an indirect question because the question doesn't begin with a WH word like what, where, when, why, who, and how, which direct questions often use. However, it is still a question and you need to listen carefully during the interview for these types of indirect questions. Let's look at another example of an indirect question. I wonder if you could tell me about a time when you faced a challenge and you overcame that challenge. Again, no WH word is used at the beginning of the question, but the interviewer uses the expression, I wonder if you could tell me. The interviewer is asking you to share an example from your own life when you had a challenge or a problem and explain how you solved that problem. So, when you hear this expression, you should recognize it as a question and be ready to answer it. One final example of an indirect question is, I'd like to know what type of skills you have that make you qualified for this job. The speaker uses the expression, I'd like to know, which means, can you tell me? Finally, in a typical interview in the US, not only does the interview ask you questions, but you will usually have an opportunity at the end of the interview to ask your own questions. The interviewer might say, do you have any questions for me? Or, do you have any questions of your own? To make a good impression, it's really important that you have already prepared at least 2 questions before the interview, and you ask these at this point. The questions should be related to the job or organization in some way. So, for example, you might ask, what opportunities are there for professional development in this company? Or, what is the next step in the interview process? So, now we've discussed some common questions in job interviews. Next, we're going to look at some ways you can ask for clarification in an interview when you don't understand the question. Thanks for watching.
Hello! In this video, we'll be looking at asking for clarification and repetition in an interview. We will discuss what asking for clarification and repetition means and give some examples of each. Clarification is when you don't understand something the interviewer says, so you ask him or her to make it clearer. Repetition is when you ask the interviewer to repeat or say again something that they said. In a job interview, there may be times when you won't understand every question an interviewer asks you. This may be especially true if you're doing an interview in a language that is not your first, such as English. It is perfectly normal that sometimes you won't understand everything the interviewer asks you. You shouldn't panic. Good interviewees have the same difficulty, but they usually have some strategies or ways of working around a difficulty that allows them to better understand what the interviewer is asking. Asking for clarification and repetition are 2 such strategies. Let's imagine the interviewer just asked you the following question. Could you tell me what kind of skills you might bring to this position? Now, let's say you don't understand the question. We're going to look at 3 useful expressions you can use to either ask the interviewer for clarification or repetition. The first expression is, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Could you repeat that, please?" The interviewee begins by apologizing for not understanding what was said. "I'm sorry." This shows politeness. The interviewee then goes on to say that he or she didn't understand. "I didn't understand your question." Finally, the interviewee asks politely if the interviewer could repeat the question by saying, "Could you repeat that, please?" Notice how could is used here, which is a more polite or less direct way of asking for something. Could you repeat that, please? The second expression is, "I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly. Did you mean?" In this case, the interviewee is making sure that he or she understands the question the interviewer just asked. The interviewee might say, "I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly. Did you mean what type of qualifications will I use in this job?" The interviewer will usually say yes or no and then give more explanation. So the interviewer might say, "Actually, no, I was asking what kind of skills might you bring to this position?" Notice how the interviewee first uses the expression, "I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly." The interviewee could have said, "I didn't understand you," but I'm not quite sure I understood you correctly is more polite and therefore sounds better. Let's look at one final expression. If I understand you correctly, you're asking. Again, the interviewee uses a more polite expression rather than saying, I don't understand you, which could sound too direct to the interviewer. If I understand you correctly, you're asking me what kind of skills I will bring to this job. The interviewer might then say, yes, that's correct. In this video, we have looked at ways of asking an interviewer to repeat or clarify information in a question. These are useful expressions you can use if you don't fully understand what the interviewer is asking you. Next, we will play a game to practice appropriate interview questions.
Hello. In this and the next and final video in our course, we are going to look at some of the do's and don'ts of an interview. We will look at what are acceptable things to see and hear in an interview in the United States and what are unacceptable things to see and hear. By the end of these two videos, you should have a clear understanding of what a good interview should look and sound like. Let's get started. We're going to begin by looking at the beginning of an interview. This is when the interviewee will first meet the interviewer and perhaps make some small talk before the actual interview begins. As you watch, ask yourself the question, is this interviewee making a good first impression? Why or why not? After the scene, we'll come back and discuss your answers.
Come in. Come in.
Am I in the right place for the job interview?
Are you Michael Flatley?
The last time I checked, I was.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. I'm Michael Flatley. I'm really sorry I'm late. The train took forever getting here. The public transportation in this city, I hate it. May I sit?
Sure.
I hope you agree that this was not the greatest of starts to an interview. First, the interviewee was late, which is not something you should ever be for an interview. Then he came dressed unprofessionally. Finally, his manner was too informal and casual for a professional situation like an interview. Let's try that once again, shall we? Again, ask yourself if this candidate is making a good first impression.
Come in.
Hi, Miss Hernandez?
Yes, are you Michael Flatley?
That's right. I hope I'm not too early.
Oh, not at all. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Did you have any trouble finding the building?
No, not at all, thank you.
Please have a seat and we'll get started.
Great.
Much better, I think you'll agree. No lateness, no unprofessional dress, no informal manner. So far, so good. I hope you'll agree that this candidate has made a good first impression. In this video, we've looked at the beginning of an interview, the moment you walk in the door to the moment the questions begin. In the next video, we'll look at the remainder of the interview and look at some more do's and don'ts.
Hi again. In this, the final video of our course, we're going to look at some more do's and don'ts of an interview. We'll compare what is appropriate and correct with what is not appropriate or correct in an interview in the United States. When we left our interview in the last video, we saw that the questioning part of the interview was about to begin. The candidate hadn't made a good first impression. He's arrived late, was unprofessionally dressed, and had an informal manner. Let's continue with the interview and see how he does answering the questions. As you watch, ask yourself these questions. 1. Does he answer the questions well? 2. When he doesn't understand a question, does he use a clarification question well? And 3. Does the interviewee have good questions of his own prepared? Ready? Back to our interview. Michael, you just told me about your biggest strength. What would you say is your biggest weakness?
Good question. To be honest, I don't really have any weaknesses.
Oh, okay. Well then, could you tell me why you want to work for this company?
Well, I hadn't really heard of this company until I heard it from a friend of mine who has this ex-girlfriend who used to work here. But I hear the pay is good and the restaurant food is awesome.
Oh, okay. Well, where do you see yourself in 3 years?
What's that?
In the future, where do you see yourself in 3 years?
Probably in your job.
Oh. All right, then. I've asked you a few questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. How much vacation time will I get in this job?
Oh, okay. In this position, you would normally get 2 days of vacation per month. So at the end of the year, that would be 24 days.
24 days? Awesome! When can I start?
We'll get back to you soon.
Okay.
Well, what do you think? I hope you can agree that this interviewee did most of the things you shouldn't do in an interview. He didn't answer the questions well, he used clarifying questions incorrectly, and he didn't have any good questions prepared for the interviewer. Overall, this was a disaster. I'm pretty sure this person will not be getting the job. Let's now turn to the other candidate. When we last saw him, he had made a good first impression by being on time, being professionally dressed, and having a professional manner. Good job so far. Let's see how he does answering the questions. Michael, you just told me about your biggest strength. What would you say is your biggest weakness?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think. Probably I take criticism a little too personal, but this is something I'm really working on and trying not to let criticism, I see it as being personal but more professional thing. Am I making sense here?
Yes, absolutely. And so why do you want to work for this company?
Well, I really like the set of products that this company has developed, and I think with my own experience and the set of skills that I've developed that I can really contribute and help this company grow.
Okay. So where do you see yourself in 3 years?
If I'm understanding you correctly, you're asking me where do I see myself in 3 years' time, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh. Well, probably in the same role or maybe in a more senior position, maybe growing into a position with more responsibility, maybe managing a team.
Okay, great. I have asked you a few questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, sure do. Are there any opportunities for professional development in this position?
Great question. We do have a budget for training, and a lot of our employees use that money to take courses. But we also offer in-house professional development a few times a year.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. Great, I can't wait to start.
All right. Well, we have a few more candidates to interview, but then we will be getting back to you very soon.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Pretty impressive responses. I hope you agree. He was well prepared and answered the questions confidently. I hope this candidate gets offered the job or at least gets called for a second interview. What do you think? In this video, we looked at some of the do's and don'ts of an interview. We compared what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Next, we'll play a game where you'll match sample answers to questions. And finally, we'll get started on our unit assessment.